Wow. I really don't know what to say about this. Joshua, I actually can't believe this. This might be the worst decision I've seen this year. And I'm trying to think, have there been like really bad decisions? I mean, Crawford Canelo was a little bit closer than it should have been, but obviously the right guy won. I thought Paddy Donovan did do enough to beat Lewis Crooker in the rematch, but fair enough, the knockdowns, etc. Yeah, can't really argue massively with that. So there's been a few decisions that you haven't necessarily agreed with, but this one right here, this wasn't one where you could turn around and say, oh, it was close, it was competitive. No. This was a slam dunk Zach Parker win. And obviously I didn't do a prediction video for this fight, but I went into this fight fully expecting Joshua Buatsi to go in there, break Zach Parker down, maybe start off a little bit slow, although Joshua Buatsi can start fast, but to maybe kind of get a sense, get a lay of the land, see how things are, and then ultimately come into this fight, break Zach Parker down. Zach Parker is someone in the past who was John Ryder, when he fought John Ryder in the O2 a couple of years ago. He was actually meant to fight Demetrius Andre, believe it or not. I think they were going to do that fight in Derby at one point, but they didn't go through with the fight. And he ended up fighting John Ryder in the O2, retired after about, 4 or 5 rounds. And a lot of people questioned the heart of Zach Parker. I questioned it as well at that point, because he didn't really seem to have that kind of, fight, want to go into a battle and fight for it. But he's rebuilded, and he went into this fight. Again, I had him as the underdog going in. From the first round, you were seeing this fight, and you were like, oh, okay. Buatsi doesn't look quite on it, and Parker does. Parker looked really on it in there. First round, he was able to stun Joshua Buatsi with an uppercut. Buatsi actually lost his mouthpiece in that exchange. And he immediately we're seeing here, you were like, right, he looks uncomfy. There's an element of uncomfortableness there about Joshua Buatsi, and you were thinking, okay, this could be interesting. The first 5 rounds, I didn't give one of them to Buatsi. I thought Zach Parker was outboxing him. He was landing good shots to the head and body. Buatsi was very ineffective with everything really. He seemed to be waiting to counterpunch. It looked like he was playing a counter-punching game. But whenever Zach Parker was in counter-punching range, he was just waiting, always out of range. Oh, and by the way, I've been hit a couple of times. Okay, that doesn't look good. That's literally what was going on there with Joshua Buatsi. Giving Zach Parker opportunities to hit him, as soon as he tried to retaliate, out of range, and he wasn't forcing it. Joshua Buatsi, and Barry Jones was making reference to this on commentary. He was saying words to the effect of, Buatsi in the amateurs, he was aggressive, he was all action, he was all on him. Well, he was. That you're very correct. He was like that. He was a lot more aggressive in the amateurs than he was in the pros, or he has been in the pros. And he's normally very aggressive. He wasn't in this fight. But Buatsi, you have to remember, they were making reference, him, Adam Smith, even Darren Barker, the 3 of them, they were making reference to Joshua Buatsi, the amateur. Oh, but he was like this in the Olympics. This is what got him a bronze. It's like, mate, that was 10 years ago. 9, but 10 years ago. He was in his early 20s back then. Now he's in his early 30s. He's had a punishing fight against Callum Smith. What makes you think that he's going to be able to have the same tenacity, the same dog that he had 10 years ago that he has now? But he really looked bad in this fight. Like, this is one of the worst performances I've ever seen from Joshua Buatsi. And I've seen pretty much all of his pro fights. I remember his pro debut. I think I've seen maybe every fight Joshua Buatsi's had live. I think I've watched them all. And I haven't seen one as bad as this. This was terrible. And that's why it makes the decision so disgraceful. Zach Parker won this fight at an absolute canter. I mean, for me personally, there was only 2 rounds. 2 rounds I gave to Joshua Buatsi in this 10-rounder. That was round 6. Thought he landed some good body shots on Zach Parker, made him feel uncomfortable in there. He definitely, I think, hurt one of the body shots in round number 6. And round number 9, he was a little bit more aggressive. He was able to get more in on Zach Parker. But again, Zach Parker was given as good as he was getting. But all the other rounds, I mean, this was Zach Parker at a canter. When I heard 95-95, I was like, huh? And then I'm thinking, okay, well, the 2 judges obviously have it for the winner. And I was thinking, it's going to be wide now, 97-93 at worst. They say 96-94. I'm like, what? And then for Buatsi, I'm like, are you taking the absolute you-know-what? I was like, Zach Parker won this fight. He won this fight. The only fight, I actually had to think about that, the only fight this year that might be worse than that in terms of a decision was Jermaine Franklin versus Ivan Ditchko. That might be the only fight that's worse. They're about the same, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, you can only make a case for one guy winning. You can't make a case for Buatsi winning this fight. Hell no. There was literally, even the rounds he won, for me anyway, he wasn't winning them clearly or anything like that. You could have easily given round 9 to Zach Parker. Easily. This is one of the worst decisions I've seen in a long, long time. I have no idea how they scored this fight for Joshua Buatsi. He lost this fight. This is back-to-back loss as far as I'm concerned for Joshua Buatsi. He didn't win this fight. Disgraceful. Shocking stuff from the judges. Really shocking. Absolutely disgraceful. Now, some would argue maybe you can say this is a bit of karma. And again, it's not Zach Parker's fault at the end of the day. He's not the one scoring the fight. But do you remember a few years ago, it was 27, it might have been on the undercard of Josh Taylor versus American, Ryan Martin, was that his name? He fought a guy by the name of Darryl Williamson. And Zach Parker was beaten pillar to post in that fight. It was a 12-rounder. Beaten pillar to post. They gave it to Parker, but I think one of them gave it to Parker very wide. So some people could say, well, maybe, this is him getting his comeuppance. He got that gift decision. Now Buatsi's got it. At the end of the day, I don't like seeing it either way. This wasn't a Joshua Buatsi win. It was a Zach Parker win. I watched the 10 rounds. Watched it live there. Wasn't compelling viewing. Parker, maybe the referee should have docked the point because Parker kept leaning his head down and then going down to a knee. And he was lucky because there was one exchange where Buatsi did land a shot, where he did do that. I thought the referee was going to call a knockdown because a punch went in and he went down on a knee. Now, I get why he didn't. He wasn't hurt, obviously. But you want to be careful with stuff like that because the referee could have easily called that a knockdown. The shot went in. But yeah, in terms of Buatsi, worst performance I've seen from him throughout his pro career. Absolutely shocking stuff. I've seen Buatsi go in there in the first round and try and take an opponent's head off. I've gone in there and seen him throw seamless combinations to head and body, even against fighters who, they're durable, they're cute, they're able to, maneuver their way through rounds and still look good. Remember when he fought Marco Kalic and he was outboxing him all those years ago? Buatsi, once it just became apparent that he was losing this fight, it was like, flip the screw, boom, go through the gears, done. There was none of that there. No urgency, no anything. For me, and I'm not throwing out any accusations or anything like that, of course not, but he fought like someone who knew he was going to get the decision, regardless. Even though he was getting peppered with jabs, he was getting hit to the body. There was a moment, I think it was one of the earlier rounds, it was really actually good from Zach Parker. He was on the ropes, he kind of pivoted around, and Buatsi kind of lost himself in the ring. Now, it wasn't like the referee said break or don't punch or anything like that. He just kind of lost himself. And Parker landed a beautiful left hook. Buatsi got a very good chin. He was hit with right hands galore by Parker in this fight. Shane Parker doesn't have the same kind of pop at 175 that he had at 168. Otherwise, he really would have been in trouble. Really good performance from Zach Parker. Didn't think he had it in him, quite frankly. And looking at this fight and looking at the card, Lyndon Arthur, who fought in the co-main event and had a brilliant fight, give credit to both guys, Bradley Ray and Lyndon Arthur, was a tremendous scrap. Lyndon Arthur, who is, 34, 35, and I've questioned his desire for the game. I've questioned a few things about Lyndon Arthur because prior to the Anthony Yarde trilogy fight, he looked really poor in a lot of fights. Some of them we've had to, come from behind to win, pull out a knockout. He looked a million times better than Joshua Buatsi looked in there tonight. It wasn't even... How the hell could anyone look at that fight and tell me Buatsi won it? I don't think you can. What? How did they... I'm stumped. I just can't believe, because this is obviously an immediate reaction, I just cannot believe they gave that fight to Joshua Buatsi. One of them had a draw. How do you... the draw scorecard, I can't even understand how you get that. But to give Buatsi 6 rounds... I gave him 2 rounds at best in this fight. I couldn't even find the 3rd round to give to him, much less another 2 after that. What the... It was more than that, actually, much less another 2. It was more than that. It was what... Jesus Christ, people. It just... I don't know how they found this. I really don't. Buatsi, to me... I don't know, is it the fact that he's with Virgil Hunter? Because Hunter is not really someone who teaches aggressive fighters. I don't know. Is it the Callum Smith performance? For me, Buatsi, really, ever since he left Matchroom, because he left Matchroom in 2023, I think it was, and he had a very lackluster performance in his boxer debut. I'm just trying to think who he fought after that. But he had a couple of lackluster performances, and I guess that this is the kind of, come to Jesus moment, I guess. Because the Smith performance, that would have taken something out of him. But even prior to that, he hadn't been looking good. Like against Willie Hutchinson, those 2 knockdowns, I think it was 2 knockdowns or a point deduction, it was something anyway, really helped him, right? Because he was losing that fight until he started getting to Willie Hutchinson. And right now, when I look at Buatsi, I just see a fighter there where I'm like, I don't know how much is left there. Because Eddie Hearn was the main promoter for Joshua Buatsi for most of his career. He seemed to match Buatsi very carefully. He kept him away from punchers. And he matched him at a very slow pace, which sometimes you would say that Eddie Hearn, he can, push them too fast. But for me, it seemed like he was matching Buatsi very slow. He was maybe fighting 3-4 times a year, but against nondescript opponents. And I was hearing rumours that he was getting a lot of money for those, 4 fights a year, like a lot against nondescript opponents. And I wonder, did he spend, because Buatsi coming out of Rio 2016, he was one of the few fighters who turned over from Team GB, who you could have probably moved a little bit quicker than you did. I'm wondering, did we miss his peak? I'm seriously wondering that, because he hasn't looked good for a while now. I know he's in his early 30s, but he has not looked good for a while. I'm wondering, was he one of those fighters who, he turned pro, I think he turned pro in 2017. Realistically, he should have been fighting for world titles by 2019, 2020. And he wasn't. He was only then just slightly starting to make the jump. I mean, let's face facts. He fought Craig Richards in 2022. And that was Craig's a European level fighter. That was 2022. So he's pro for what? 5 years? So it took them 5 years to get him a proper domestic clash against a European level opponent. Buatsi's better than that. He could have done that years prior. So I do wonder, are we maybe seeing a slide of Buatsi? Has he stagnated? Have we missed his best years? Potentially. But either way, he didn't win this fight. Sorry, he didn't win this fight. That was a shocking decision, completely disgraceful. Don't agree with it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video as always. If you could, smash the like button, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Until next time, peace.